face.
I'd like to call to order the special call meeting of the South San Antonio Independent School District for Wednesday, December 6, 2017, and the time is 6 p.m. Ms. Martinez, could you take roll call?
Mrs. Angelino Estiguín,
Present.
Mr. Luis Ibarra Jr.,
Present.
Mrs. Leticia Guerra, Mrs. Connie Prado,
Present.
Mrs. Helen Mandla Prather, Mrs. Elda Flores.
Present. Okay, but on my computer, it's not pulling up the board book. All right, so now we go into Pledge of Allegiance, Texas Pledge, prayer, and call to action.
Everyone please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance tonight. Amen. And now the call to action. All students will enjoy successful education experiences to empower them to make decisions and enrich their lives in the future they create. You may be seated.
The board will, now we're going to be going into closed session. The board will return to open session and take appropriate action, if any, on items discussed in closed session. No action will be taken in closed session. Further, board members are reminded that all items discussed in closed session must remain confidential so as to avoid liability to the district. The board will consider and discuss the following items. Closed meeting pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.0821. Discussion concerning personnel matters pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, and the time is 6:02 p.m.
turn around and bring it up. All right. I have and we have a consent item on here. So I just wanted to.
Calling the meeting back to open session. The time is 6:33 p.m. We are under the consent. Legal? No. So for the consent, there's only one item. If I can hear a motion.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we approve the Zenfield to provide copy machine lease services.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Mrs. Prado, seconded by Mrs. Guerra. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now, discussion and possible action. Number 1, discussion and possible action concerning appointment or election for a board member vacancy. Dr. Slater.
So, being a member of the board, Ms. Linda Longoria resigned her position as a board member effective November the 8th. And so at this point, the board has the option to appoint, well, just have the option to decide on the process whether this is going to be an appointment to fill her seat or part of an election. Also, for the benefit of the public, Ms. Helen Matlin has also resigned her seat effective immediately, has received her letter today. So the board has 2 board vacancies to fill at this point. And the purpose of this item on the agenda is for the board to decide whether you'll do it through appointment or whether you'll do it through election. You can decide both the same, both separately in different processes. The attorney's here to provide you any other guidance in reference to what the options are.
Okay, board members. I wanted to remind you that we are under a 2-minute for yourself, please have your timers. Everybody has a smartphone. And it is open for discussion. And if there's any motions to be made, I'd like to hear them. We'd like to have the floor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion and then discussion. Is that part of my 2 minutes?
Make the motion. The discussion would be 2 minutes.
I make the motion that we conduct a special election for both the district, is it 2 and 6? Is that the
That's 3, Ms. Longoria is 3.
3 and 6? For districts 3 and 6 to fill the vacancy in conjunction with the upcoming May elections.
Do I hear a second?
My second.
Okay, a motion has been made by Mrs. Bravo, seconded by Mrs. Guerra. It's open for discussion.
I'd like to, my 2 minutes if I could, and I'll keep it short. I think, first of all, I'm surprised that we had 2 vacancies now. I'm sad to hear that. But I think if anybody should have a right or should choose who their representative to be, it should be the people of their community that they're going to be representing. And I think, as we were told, the cost is not that much. There's already going to be election in May. And I think the community of those 2 districts should decide who will be sitting at this chair and making the decisions for them. So that's the reason for my motion.
Okay. Board members? Mrs. Flores?
Yeah, I wrote a few key points here about filling this position. At the time, it was just Ms. Longoria's position that I was thinking about until we found out of Ms. Mathis. But our next available date for a special election is not until May, like you mentioned, Ms. Prado. And that would mean that the people in Ms. Longoria's district would not be represented for 6 months. And that would mean the same thing now for Ms. Madela's district. And we've got important work to do over the next 6 months. And I think the community members in that sector of our district, and of both districts, District 3 and District 6, need to have a voice in the decisions that we're making. Not only are we starting to implement the Lone Star governance, but we're also making exciting and important decisions as part of our work in the System of Great Schools initiative. And I'm proud of the progress our board has made over the past year. And I don't want to take a step backward by leaving a portion of our community unrepresented.
Starting route to 331
For half a
Primrose
year.
Place.
The community will have the opportunity to elect their board member in November of 2018, and that would be Ms. Longoria's position if there is an appointee, and then that would also be Ms. Madla's position, or Prater's position. And by law, the appointed person only serves until the next regular election. So my argument is that we should go with the appointment, then there would not be an interruption in the representation of those neighborhoods, and the people will have a chance to select their own representative in November.
So do I hear an amended motion?
Yeah.
Are you going to have everybody say something first and then have a
And then-
second go around?
Yeah.
I'll wait if there's a-
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Well, I think, I tend to agree with Ms. Flores about the unrepresented district for 6 months. So the special election will be until May, the end of May.
Council?
It would be the start of May, first Saturday.
So my question would be, the appointment for clarification, because I've never been through this. So the appointment process, if we went to an appointment, how quickly could we get that done, or what's the process?
So if the board today decides to do an appointment, then it would be an agenda item on December 20th. And then we would decide the process on how quickly or how extensive.
Because
Because we have a
I know-
timeline as to if we go through the appointment process, we do have a timeline as to when that appointee needs to be done.
The board's appointment process is its own. The board is the sole holder of how and where that appointee is decided, as long as the individual appointed can, of course, hold that chair by law, which would be your non-felon over 18 and resides within the district of which the chair he or she is filling.
So my question is, like, let's say we go through appointment, what's like the latest we can appoint?
The seat has to be filled 180 days after the vacancy occurred.
Okay. So that would be before May.
Correct.
Same situation. My question, I guess, is Ben, our normal lawyer at the meetings, gave us a paper, which
Right.
I think I have it here. And so he listed here, if we went the appointee route, that passed, I guess, boards request applications from qualified individuals, and then we could, as a board, choose to interview candidates and stuff like that. So my concern is the length of waiting for a special election. And if we went the appointment route, if that would expedite filling the seat. So I guess my question is, we could start that process as quick as we wanted to, or is,
Yeah, it would be on the agenda for December 20th to discuss the process and how timely or quickly we want to get that done.
okay. Yeah, so that's the only question I had. I think I want to fill the seat before May. I wouldn't want the seat to go vacated that long, not with all the things that we have going on in the district right now. I mean, we have, besides SGS, a lot of oversight governance, a lot of policy. We're trying to do a lot of things, and the quicker we bring somebody in to represent that community, the better, in my eyes.
Mrs. Guerra?
Okay, so applications would be turned in, and then the board would vet the interviewees, the candidates?
As I understand, if the board decides to go the appointment way, we as a board decide what that process will be. Do we interview on a special called meeting? What questions do we ask? Do we ask for a resume? Whatever we want, whatever that process we want it to be, we decide as a whole, agree on that, and then we start the process.
Background check and everything would be included?
I mean, whatever the board decides to do.
Okay, that's it.
Do you need a substitute motion?
Hold on, so there's a second round. Mrs. Broadway, I need to say something. Okay, so So Mrs. Longoria's seat, though she was here for a year, and she resigned, so because it's come before the board to decide, my opinion is to go for an appointment only because I kind of second what Mrs. Flores and Mr. Ibarra said, that waiting the full 180 days is bad representation for that community. Going the appointment route, we set the process as to what we're looking for, and so we speed the process along and we get them to fill that seat, and so that we can, deal with the business at hand. I think it also applies to Mrs. Matla's situation, because she just resigned today. And, again, filling a vacant seat, it is before the board to decide. Granted, it's very inexpensive to go for a special election, but to get someone appointed is a lot quicker. Get them, start doing business, and then, they will either, if they choose, it's like a trial run for them. If they like it the 6 months, then they get to rerun again for the seat for a longer term. So I'm in agreement, or I prefer the appointment. So Mrs. Prado, this is your second go around.
Thank you. Just so that everyone's familiar with the calendar, election calendar, because it's elections in May, our process, if that's what the board decides, we really won't start till January, because in December it's on the agenda. We decide on the process, then you have to take time to receive applications, and then you have to get an interview. The election calendar for May, candidates or people from the community, from those districts that are interested, they start voting in February. It's not till May. They actually file for candidacy in February. They start their campaigning, and then the early voting starts in April, because the election day is the beginning of May. So it's not that much of a lapse. And I really feel strong about letting the community decide who's going to represent them. But that's my opinion, and that's the decision of the board. But the timeline is not that long.
Second go around. Mrs. Flores?
Well, I feel that the community will decide once their election cycle comes to be. But at this point, I feel that if we make that decision come December the 20th, what that process is going to be, then there will be a round of interviews, and we can make that decision as to what the timeline and the window will be. And we may even have representatives sitting here by the end of January, early part of February, and because we still have a lot of work to do between now and May.
Okay. Any others for the second caller?
So, I think we can probably cut the time in half. So I do see the point Ms. Prado was making about the candidate having to file by February, but we don't fill the seat until the election date, regardless. And so I think we cut the time of a vacant seat in half by appointment is what I think we can do, which is why I was asking about the process. But if we can cut the time in half, I think that's a benefit to, everything we got going on right now with all the initiatives that we're trying to push. So that's just my feeling.
Okay, so there's a main motion. Is there any other second go around? Okay, so there's a main motion on the floor. Do I hear an amended motion?
I have an amended motion.
Okay.
I move to appoint representatives for District 3 and District 6 to the San Antonio School Board through a process to be determined at the December 20th regular school board meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, an amended motion has been made by Mrs. Flores, seconded by Mr. Ibarra. And as I understand it, we vote on the amended first.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'd like to take a roll call. That means a show of hands for the motion. Please raise your hand.
For the amended motion.
For the amended motion. And a show of hands against the motion. Okay, so motion passes. Now, the amended motion is the main motion. Mrs. Flores, could you read it again?
Okay,
I'm sorry, Yeah, it becomes the main motion, so read it again.
Okay. I move to appoint representatives for the District 3 and District 6 South San Antonio School Board through a process to be determined at the December 20th regular school board meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Okay.
I just need clarification from legal counsel. It's always been my understanding when there's an amendment, we used to call it substitute motion then, and then Mr. O'Hanlon said, no, it's called an amendment. That when the amendment passes or a substitute, once that passes, the main motion therefore dies and there's no need to take a vote on it.
The first time you vote to have the amended motion become the main motion. That was the first vote. The board has agreed to substitute the original with the amended, and now you're taking the actual vote for action on the new main motion, which was the prior amended motion.
So we're having to vote twice on the amended motion?
The first vote is the board agreeing to swap the motions, and now that the board has just now agreed that the amended has become the main, the board is now voting on the actual substance of the motion, which was the amended motion. That's now the main motion. So a little confusing. Does that make sense, or I can try to further clarify?
Yeah, no,
As illustrated to me, it's a ladder.
it's always been that the main motion just dies and you don't have to vote. But your legal counsel, I'm not, so.
Well,
Okay.
I did review Robert's Rule of Order
Okay.
earlier today on amended motions for this specific issue in case it was to occur, so I assure you that's my understanding.
I take your word for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Mr. Ibarra.
So just to further clarify the point right now, so the vote we had just taken a minute ago was to make this motion now the main motion. We weren't voting on the actual
Correct.
motion that she brought to the table yet.
That is correct.
Okay.
So substantively, there was no vote. It was simply to trade the two
Right.
motions on the floor.
Now
Now
we're
we're having
voting
a
for,
substantive vote.
okay,
Yes, sir.
understood.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so motion's on the floor, made by Mrs. Flores, seconded by Mr. Ibarra. I'd like a roll call. Show of hands if you're in favor for the motion. Show of hands if you're not in favor. Motion carries. Dr. Saavedra, if you could put it on the December 20th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we're going to go into a work session, a team of 8 training, but clearly it has now dropped to team of 6, and we are going to go down to the floor.
Foreign lives in West State. There's nothing more exciting than West State. How are you?
State Farm.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm afraid you're not the vote. Sure we can. And a zombie? Seriously? No, you can't.
Dr. Saavedra, can we move this? So we're close to that.
Oh, don't worry. The insects?
Yeah.
Backwards, we got it.
Yes.
You know what, I can move sets. And I brought the mints. Gotta have mints.
You need a lawyer? We'll be here, we'll be here.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, just want to check. Thank you. I'll come to level 5 one second.
One of the primary documents that the board operates with is the board operating procedures. And as a board, the board paid a lot of attention to it when it was developed. 3 years ago. This was the first time. And then, it was revised again about 15 months ago, I think. A little more than a year ago, I think. I forgot exactly the date. They were revised. But since they were revised, one, we've not paid a lot of attention to it. We've had a board election last November. Three new board members, now 2, came on, but we've never really had a discussion on it. And so when Segui and I were talking about this Team of 8 training, we kind of thought that it would be important to walk through the operating procedures, either agree or amend or change or delete, whatever the preference of the board might be, The other component concerning this process is there's supposed to be a signature sheet that board members signed when the first one came on, the first original document was generated. And I believe when subsequent elections, some board members were asked to sign, others were not. At this point, other than the original signature sheet, we don't really have one at this point. But so it's important that whatever the board agrees, whatever document the board agrees to, that becomes final, that we develop a signature sheet for not only what do we have? These 5 board members, but really when we have all seven we will sign off on it. So that's basically it. And so I thought we could maybe walk through it. And do you have anything else?
No, that was it. We're going to go through each, heading number 1, we're going to go through each 1.1. We're going to read it. If you have any questions, if you need some clarity, by all means ask. And those are the things we're looking for. Do we need to keep it? Do we need to amend it? Or do we need to remove it? And then,
Is this going to satisfy our requirement for the training?
Team of 8.
So as you go through each one, are you going to want each one of us to say yes or nay? Or do you want a consensus from all?
not necessarily consensus. I want input.
Input.
I want, yeah, I can stay, or I'm okay with it, or
Okay.
we can move on.
Ms. Prado asked me if this would meet the requirements for Team of 8 training. The agenda itself will. What I'm not real clear on is whether, now that there's 5 board members left, whether it will meet the requirement where all board members need to attend. That part I'm not sure about, because, like I said, Helen turned it in today. She said effective immediately. But technically, as the lawyer said, it doesn't become effective until 8 days later. So I'm going to ask TEA or TASB, kind of give them the background. They can tell us whether or not the board as a whole meet the requirement of Team of 8 training.
Although we have until the end of the year, so
Yeah.
even though it's 8 days,
Yeah,
we would still have a timeline.
you could call another meeting, and do it again. Or not do it tonight if you want to come back.
So we couldn't have it tonight, and then she doesn't rescind her resignation and say, we were only 5 and we're still 5, so.
Yeah, it's just that's not my call. I
Yeah.
gotta ask somebody and they can decide. My guess is they'll give us credit, but I could be wrong. I just can't guarantee you that.
Right.
But if I understand it correctly, we won't get the credit for Team of 8, but we'll get the individual
Oh, yeah,
hours
you
credit.
do get the individual hours of credit.
But I think the requirement
Is the Team of 8.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yeah, that's correct.
And in the 3 years I've served, I've only got it once.
I see.
Yeah, we didn't get it last year.
Yeah.
Okay, I think somebody was missing, I forgot who was missing, somebody was.
No, we got it last year.
We
We
did?
didn't get it the year before.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing
And
that.
it's a requirement to satisfy TA,
Yeah.
TSB, or?
And before, nobody knew it was like, and nobody cared. They didn't do as many hours as was needed. But last year, they said it was going to be mandatory and names were going to be put up, right? Or
They're
there
called out.
was more accountability.
I see.
So we definitely have to do something about it.
I mean, I don't mind having it, if y'all don't mind, and hopefully we get
I just
credit.
want to meet the requirement,
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the
So he's
case
gonna
can
ask,
be
if
made
we
that
don't get the requirement, then we'll have it to the end of the year.
This
Do it
is-
again.
This is it's in the education code, the requirement, all right? TEA has the responsibility for enforcing the code. This is a board governance issue. I would think AJ is the one that's going to decide that. I'll visit with him. He's pretty reasonable. I don't think he's going to say, hey, you don't meet it, you got to meet 3 more hours to cover the same material again. You know?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. So
I mean, we'll see.
I feel relatively certain they'll give you credit, give us credit for it. Okay.
All right. So the first one is board member ethics. I can read it. All board members of the South San ISD are responsible for reading and complying with the ethical standards outlined in district policies BBF legal and BBF local. There shall be a signature line for each board member to sign and date, attesting to the fact that the board member has read, understood, and agrees to comply with these board operating procedures and any future amendments. So what do we think?
If we're gonna have some policies, obviously everybody should be able to sign off and agree that they're.
So the other question I would ask the board members is whether y'all are familiar with what BBF legal and local say. Whether y'all have reviewed that. And I would encourage, if you haven't, I would encourage you to read it periodically. It's an ethics policy, right? Okay.
Okay. So that stays. Number 2, conducting board meetings, appointment of sergeant at arms. And so basically that states that the chief of police is designated and he should be here at all the meetings where the board of trustees or board committees are appointed under board policy BDB local. In his absence, he can appoint 1 or more officers to serve as deputy sergeant at arms of, the board. Do we have any questions?
And that has been happening, right?
Well, let me talk about it a little bit. This clause came in when the operating procedures were amended about a year, 15 months ago, 16 months ago, a year and a half. We did not have a sergeant at arms. Not all boards have a sergeant at arms. As a matter of fact, in the districts I've served previously, those boards never had a sergeant at arms. I don't know if it's unusual or not. I'm just saying that it's not a common thing for a board but through my experience, to have a sergeant at arms. At the time these amendments were made, there's a lot, to be frank about it, there's a lot of misbehavior at the board table, And when Mr. O'Hanlon was asked to redraft this and come up with some solutions to control that misbehavior, this was a solution, But quite frankly,
So you're saying that this appointment of a sergeant at arms was to control the board?
well, I think that was part of the rationale.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of the rationale.
Because it was so disruptive, the members that were there.
I was reading is that it's more
I thought it was for control of the
It's
meeting.
really both.
Yeah.
It would control both, but to tell you the truth, we have a police officer every single time. That person doesn't have to be officially a sergeant at arms for me to tell the officer, remove somebody.
Remove,
Yes.
just really,
Right, someone that's
constituent
disruptive,
or
right.
whatever.
That's why we have a police officer,
Right.
I think we felt we needed to put something in there because of the situation with the board back then. It got to that extent where you couldn't control the board members and that was what done.
Really?
That was bad.
Do we feel that way now?
No, absolutely not. This is nice.
Okay.
Compared to what it was.
Well, because I don't. I think we can all have a nice discussion whether we agree or disagree. I don't think, my opinion, I don't think you need I don't think you need this for board control. I really don't. I feel like.
It doesn't apply to the sport.
It doesn't apply to what's occurred in the last year or so, as far as behavior and all that things. And like I said, we always have a police officer here. If somebody becomes unruly in the audience, whatever, we can still have that person removed. My suggestion would be to delete this clause completely and anything to do with the sergeant at arms. I don't think you need a sergeant at arms. Now, you can always amend this. If things change, you become a bad guy. We have to control you somehow.
Just be me.
Yeah, that's what I told them. I said, we're going to put food up there, that way, control the amount of talking.
I'm okay with deleting.
Item 2.
So 2.1 and 2.2.
Yes.
Yeah. And there'll be another one later on, but for right now, it's those two.
Okay, 2.3, applause, outbursts, or demonstrations by audience. No outbursts or other demonstration by any spectator shall be permitted during the course of a meeting.
So I have a question on that. Lately, Ben, or whoever the attorney is, before citizens to be heard, kind of reads a statement that kind of goes over that. And do we necessarily need it here?
I think, to me, it's like these are board operated
Right.
procedures. So I don't really think it applies to the board. I think it's more focused on the audience
I think
than
you're
it
right.
is on the board.
That is true. This is for us.
Oh,
Remove it.
I think so.
2.4, note of ruling. After repeated warnings to persons in the audience to refrain from demonstrating, the presiding officer may direct the sergeant at arms to remove the offending individual from the meeting room. So we remove the sergeant at arms. Do we want this ruling? And if we do, then the wording needs to change.
Just to the police officer head,
That's
to
what
the arms.
Yeah, I think this is not necessarily governing board behavior. And so it's kind of like what you all decided, 2.3, doesn't it applies to the audience, not necessarily to the board.
And if we want a police officer to remove an audience member, I mean, that can happen, right?
Of
Well,
course,
so not
yeah.
just the veteran has to direct.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying that can happen, like,
Yeah.
Right.
we don't need
Right.
this
No, we don't need it
To do
to
that.
enforce that.
to enforce it.
Because like you say, preceding the citizens to be heard has already been,
Right.
you know,
Mentioned,
council's
kind
already
of
told them.
Yeah.
goes over it.
So that's removed. 2.5, sanctions for obstructing proceedings. The Board of Trustees or internal committee during its sessions may direct the removal of the offending individual from district premises for a period of up to 48 hours of any person not a member for a violation of these rules for disrespectful and disorderly conduct in its presence or for obstructing any proceeding.
Again, it sounds like it's more towards the audience again, right?
That's how I
I
see it.
think so.
I do have a question. What is internal committee? I'm just curious.
Internal committee, some boards have subcommittees, a board facility committee, instructional committee. It's usually bigger districts have subcommittees. We don't, but and I've been here, we've never had these internal committees, but I think that's what that deals with.
It applies more to the audience, right?
Yeah.
Well, this whole thing applies to the audience, because she was asking about what's an internal committee. Internal committee is the subcommittee. Well, I'll tell you what, we do have one, the Lone Star Governance Committee.
Oh, yeah.
That's for example, the
Of the
internal
board,
committee.
right.
Of
Yes.
the board.
That's probably, I think that's the only one we have, but if I can recall.
So do we need it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
This is gonna become a one-pager.
2.6.
I mean, I think it should be.
Decorum and debate of trustees. At all times, board members and superintendent will conduct themselves with the utmost professionalism and respect toward one another, toward members of the administration, toward employees, and toward members of the community.
I think that's common sense.
I know.
Not at the other board, but those two people were here, but now, I mean,
It doesn't apply to this board.
I mean, yeah.
I think we all try to be respectful, of not only of them, but of each other as well.
So remove it?
I think so.
have a pitch now.
2.7, members to address president or presiding officer. During board meetings, board members will not carry on a debate among each other. All questions must be directed to the board president. When a trustee is about to speak in debate or to communicate any matter to the board or internal committee, the member shall address the president or, as the case may be, the presiding officer. A trustee who desires to speak on a pending question should address the president or presiding officer, and having obtained recognition may speak in an orderly way. Board members must be recognized by the board president before speaking. The board president must recognize each board member when a board member raises his or her hand asking for the floor or asks to be recognized.
It needs to stay because that's just a reminder of what the procedure is, what we need to do.
Edward?
Now, is this part of the, when, like when we came in office, we had to do like a little training, introduction, whatever you want to call it. Orientation, there you go. Do we not kind of go over how things?
Well, they kind of went over this that day. That's what they went over, was this. So you were told you could consent.
Well, I don't have a problem keeping it on, I'm just saying, once you kind of know how the meeting should run, like, when Connie's speaking, I don't speak, and then I raise my hand when I want to speak, that you recognize me. I mean, I think, once you learn that that's the procedure, I don't think you need a policy for it, but that's just my opinion, I mean.
It's not a policy, it's
Yeah, it's a policy.
but it's still a good reminder.
Yeah, and then
Like this is-
if, I think, as we get comfortable, and
Yeah.
then we have 2 new board members coming
Right.
in.
You never know
I think,
how
yeah,
they're-
we need to have it on
Yeah.
there. At least for now, and the Dr. Weather said you can always change if you want to be more.
Leave it on.
As I read this earlier today, trying to decide what needs to be amended, let's, at some point here, and it's probably not here, although it could be here, we need to talk about the 2-minute rule that y'all have.
Yes.
We need to, I think that needs to find its way into board operating procedures as well. So I don't know if it's here.
Is that nowhere?
Well,
No, it's not.
it's not,
That's right.
yeah, it's not here anywhere right now. It could also come under 2.11, we can talk about it when we get there, but just want to plant that in your mind. The 2-minute rule probably needs to go in here somewhere.
Right. You're right.
Okay. So we'll move on, and then after we speak on 2.11, then we can decide where it goes. 2.8, interruption of president or presiding officer. The president of the board of trustees or the presiding officer shall not be interrupted while putting the question or addressing the board.
Can we do that, do we?
No,
We don't do that.
so.
So keep it,
I think what you'll need to balance here is, well, some of this was put in there because that misbehavior at that particular time, the fact that we no longer have that misbehavior, is it in part because the rule is there, or, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, do you remove it,
And then is there an
and yeah, then it becomes a problem, and then you have to come back and amend it. I don't know, it's just something for y'all to think about.
So it's almost like number 2.7,
Yeah.
as a reminder of how the meetings
Right.
should run.
Right.
And I think my opinion is, I think most of this we should keep only for the reason that we're getting new board members in.
That's true.
And they're need to know
Step
what
on it.
is
You're right.
done.
And then in my discussion with Dr. Slither,
You're right.
I like to put it somewhere in here as well, that this gets visited every year.
Maybe at
Around this
11
time.
time, after the new board comes in.
No, I think every year, because,
Don't we have elections every year?
no, every 2 years.
Oh, it's every 2 years, that's right.
And so I think every year, because we
As a
may change within that
Right.
year.
As a reminder.
That's
Yeah, that's
right.
a good.
It's a
And
good way.
it becomes a living document at that point,
Right.
because we're visiting it every year.
Okay.
I agree with Stella, we should keep 2.8.
Okay. 2.9, interruption of member speaking. No trustee shall interrupt another trustee who has the floor or otherwise interrupt the business of the board of trustees or internal committee, except for the purpose of making a point of order, moving the previous question, demanding that a point of order under discussion or consideration be immediately decided.
It should stay at 2.7 and 2.8.
Okay. Recognition of trustees in debate. When 2 or more trustees begin to speak at once, the presiding officer shall decide which one shall speak first. I think again, I should say,
Stay.
we've been very courteous.
And you've been doing that.
2.11, speaking more than once in single debate. No trustee shall speak more than once in any debate concerning a matter for the board's or internal committee's deliberation. until every trustee desiring to do so shall have spoken, and no trustee shall speak more than twice in any one debate. The board president must recognize all board members once, such that all board members have an opportunity to address each issue under consideration before recognizing board members a second time on the same issue under consideration as per Robert's Rules of Order.
If I may, I think this was a 2.11. I think the 2-minute clause should maybe be put in there where it says, the first sentence, no trustee shall speak more than once in a debate concerning matters for the board or internal committee's deliberation until every trustee to do so shall have spoken, and no trustee shall speak more than twice in any one debate for more than 2 minutes.
Okay, so the way the 2 minutes is, it's 2 minutes per subject.
For debate.
Total.
Total.
Per subject, right.
So if
Per
we,
item, right.
no, subject. So it's, right now we have 3 subjects. We have reports,
Well, it's
we
agenda.
have consent, and then we have discussion and possible action. So 2 minutes per section.
Right. So, but I think there should be something there that allows us some leeway should there be an item that comes up that may require more than 2 minutes of a debate among us. Because once you have your 2 minutes, that's it, there's no more debate. You know, what if there is an item that's a really hot item that we need to really get into a discussion about? You know, not every meeting, but, you know, caveat or something there. That's just my opinion.
So the way do we have the language of how the constraint reads?
I don't have it. Can you bring, you don't have your book with you, your, the Lone Star Governance? Can you bring the Lone Star Governance book?
AE policy?
Well, I think we do need to limit discussion, because I mean, some people get long-winded.
I'll admit.
No, but I'm saying, I do want to, I don't want to drag a meeting on until midnight like we used to do at the beginning.
You're welcome to stay, but if you want to.
I think that on certain subjects, when it's an issue that's worthy of discussion, I think,
There'll be some.
just, I don't know, it's just,
Okay.
every
so-
now and then, there is a situation where I think,
The board constraints for the board. The board places the following constraints on itself collectively and on its trustees individually. To not perform or appear to perform any of the roles delegated to the superintendent. Should not allow the introduction of new information or materials related to the agenda items. The board's discussion of any agenda item shall not exceed 14 minutes, with each trustee allowed 2 minutes to comment. So then there's even a cap on the
overall discussion.
overall discussion.
This is 2 per.
Yeah, of course. Is there something in our board policy that speaks to the 2 minutes as well?
No.
That's not what policy.
This is the policy.
This is the
This
board
is AE.
operating, this is the operating procedure.
No,
Yes, but I'm reading AE local.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that-
I thought you were reading the governance.
No, what-
No, this is-
these changes are from here, got into policy.
Yeah.
So they're policy
So
now.
it's in policy.
Right.
So,
Thank you, sir.
we don't, if we.
So if we wanted to extend or change that,
Then
then we'd have to
constraint.
go to the constraint and make an adjustment, is what we're saying, right?
Or I could yield my 2 minutes to a board member and say, I'm not discussing, but could we do that?
Well, what's going to happen is that then the timekeeper, okay, Louis, you only spoke 1 minute, Salvi, you only spoke 1 minute, Scrubby spoke 2.
Yeah, then it becomes that.
So we have all extra 5 minutes out of the 14, so who wants to speak? I mean, it's going to end up being.
So,
And then the people talking, they're gonna say, well, why do they go over their 2 minutes and give their minutes to somebody? We should be able to
Anything
have the same.
complicated as that.
so what you can do, if you want to give yourself some leeway, because there may be issues at some point that you may want to discuss further. You may want to give your board president the authority to extend time if in her judgment, she determines, yeah, we need to discuss this further. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, because keep in mind, it's a local policy, not a legal policy. So you have the authority as a board to not follow your local policy or amend it or modify it or, make an exception to it. And in the operating procedures, you may put some language concerning the 2-minute ruling that says that you also give the board president discretion to extend time if that's what y'all want to do. Because there may be a situation, and it's the type of thing where you don't want to use it all the time,
Right.
but there may be a situation where it may require more discussion, possibly,
And
Makes-
I'm posing y'all a question. In what situations do you think I would allow further discussion?
Budget process, salaries, I don't
It
know.
only applies to student outcomes, the goals, the constraints to the superintendent, and the constraints to the board.
And
Would the budget be a constraint for the board?
It's not a constraint. The budget is our fiduciary
It's
responsibility,
not a constraint.
so it's not a constraint.
Is it a constraint for Savannah?
Now, the constraints we put on him are the absence rate to, not allow the absence rate to increase or remain the same. Shall not allow any campuses to have inequitable access to effective staff, and not propose a change of use for a functioning campus unless the board has adopted a long-term facilities plan that is developed by a structured process for gathering and incorporating the community's values and ideas.
so that's one of the reasons that, one of the reasons I'm suggesting that the exception authority be at the board level, because she truly understands the rules, and I mean, because, you may be arguing, we need more time, and then she needs to exercise judgment as to whether or not it falls within, the framework that you're using or not,
Well, then she makes that judgment and determines whether it's
Yes.
a student outcome goal discussion or it's a constraint or
Right.
not. Then
Right. See,
that's when you
one
make
one
that.
of the things about this 2-minute rule, the 14-minute total rule, is that in Lone Star governance, they want all board discussion to be in this area. The rest of it is pretty much administrative. Don't get me wrong, it's important. And if you're going to spend, today y'all approved the $300,000 contract on the copier. I think that's what it was, something like that. It was a big amount of money, but questions on things like that should come ahead of time, since you gave the agenda ahead of time. And so it's encouraging the board to submit that so that you don't have those debates or discussions at the board table, and that you only do instructional type things at the board table.
So
Is
then-
it reading the Lone Star governance, if what needs to be on discussion and possible action, our agenda heading, is relevant to the Lone Star governance,
Right.
the items we voted on, and anything that the state requires us to take action on.
So that could be just about, we take action on a lot of things.
Yeah, but if it's not, the state requires us to take action on that involves the Lone Star governance stuff. If it doesn't, it goes to consent. So
Well,
that's why our
Well, the goal is-
consent
the
is
goal-
growing. That's why we have like a lot of items in consent.
Yeah, and so the goal, I think, of Lone Star governance is so that 50% at least of your meeting time is on student outcome goals.
At least.
So I don't know that we necessarily need to dissect it so far as into, exactly what,
Well, I'm following it because I want to get to master focus. And it says that, it details what should go on your headings.
so like, we had the item Dr. Rose said, the company. That is not really directly student outcome.
That's why it was in consent.
Right, it's more administrative, so with the 2-minute, we would still have to stick to that.
Yes, because if it's in consent, then there should be a motion to incorporate all of them. And if you're pulling out, then let's say you pull out 10 items, then you have very limited time to speak. In other words, you're not supposed to be pulling out, you shouldn't really have any questions because they should have already been submitted and getting a reply.
Well, and I'd like to speak to that. I agree. That was the whole purpose of submitting questions ahead of time, so that the staff can answer your questions. So when we come to the meeting, we can stick to the 2 minutes, vote on all the consent, not have to poll. But, and I'm the one that submits most of the questions.
You do a good job.
Every Monday, I have questions, I redo my agenda. But I keep getting written up by the conservator for asking questions. So am I wrong in asking questions ahead of time? Should I just now wait and ask them at the meeting?
No. I don't think you've been written up for asking questions ahead of time.
Yeah, I don't think that was the remark.
Well,
Yeah.
at the level of the questions, yes, they've been cited.
But the fact that it's ahead of time is not really the reason.
No.
It's because of the.
The context, the
Yeah.
content of
Because if
the
you had asked that question at the board table, you probably would have been written up anyway.
But the content has to do with the agenda item. So,
Yes, but micromanaging, is it an operational question, which the administration has sole responsibility for?
well, I'm not, in my questions, I don't direct anything. I'm just asking to confirm, like the issue with the funding. There was no funding, so, I wanted to know what account was that coming from. That's all I asked. So is that considered micromanaging? That's information that we should be getting.
Well, not necessarily. As a matter of fact, I can't say in both because I haven't been in both districts, but in my past experience, the fund number and the function number and the object number, not all districts have put that information. Because quite frankly, how the administration decides to pay for it is not really a board function. It's really the administrative function.
Right.
It's, what you're being asked to approve is a purchase, let's just say the copy machines. Regardless of what function number we put or anything like that, that's an administrative function. And I think that's what the conservator was trying to point out, that it's what you're asking, because you're going into the administration side at that point.
But I just, and I understand, but all I'm, just as an information to show where is it going. I'm not saying it shouldn't go there or it should. That's your decision. You're in charge of that. But I think, and we've always had our functions and fund and the code of where it's coming out of. And it's just for information. That's it. It's not, I'm not going to disapprove it because of the function. It's something that is needed and you're recommending, so I'm going to approve it. But I mean, we should have the information. And I know you disagree with me on that, and I know the conservator is writing me up on that, but I think,
But there's a very fine line between micromanaging and no oversight, because we got dinged because,
yeah.
well, it was the board before us, right? But they were dinged
Right.
because no oversight.
Oversight on
All these things
finances,
happened, and the board didn't ask those questions. And if she is asking, how do we know where the line is?
But
Yeah, I
what
think-
specifically was the oversight that the board, because I wasn't here, so I'm not sure, what was the oversight that this district got written on that the board didn't do, that we should make sure that is done, because that is our job, our role, and not the finding out where money's going to come from to pay, certain things. So I just.
The letter from the commissioner at the time that the district board was written up was in reference to past practices of this district. It came in 2014 or whenever it came. But it was
2010, right?
Yeah, it was going way back. In essence, what they were saying is previous boards, not necessarily the board sitting at that particular time, although it was some of the same board members, but they were basically saying that previous boards didn't pay enough attention to the fiscal management of the district.
And I think it was in relationship to policies not being brought into
Yes.
the board.
It's policies. You might recall the very first thing I did when I came in was fire the business guy, the head business guy, because it was a mess. It was absolutely one of the worst things I've ever seen as far as how money is being managed. And we're still discovering some of these things. You know what I mean? It's complex. This is a multi-million-dollar operation. It's very complex to find all the problems. But that's what they were saying is, in reference to, did we have the right policies in place? We submitted a big old manual as far as the corrective action plan. That's what the agency or the commissioner was talking about when they corrected the board and behavior. It wasn't because you weren't asking about the funds or the functions or anything like that, you know? Because frankly, you as a board hold me, I hold the CFO accountable for, you know, for what we recommend, you know, making sure that because we do reports to the agency and to the feds as to how money is being spent and so forth, you know. And so you have a lot of hands in this, you know, and there's a lot of staff that they're involved in this, and it's our job to try to keep an eye on all of this, you know. And
I think it might not be a bad idea if we can have a copy of that investigation of where we got dinged for the new board members. So you need to see where they're citing us.
What I'm trying to figure out when you were saying all of this is, but how was the previous boards back then to know that they needed to adopt policy for the business operations?
well, I guess it's a question.
Or we're kind of being told not to mingle.
Well,
I don't understand.
it's a question of understanding specifically the legal policies. The legal policies that are in place are basically the laws. That's basically the law. And as you know, there's a lot of policies in the books. And all districts follow the legal policies, every single one. You know, and clearly understanding what those legal policies are about, and what are the requirements of the board and responsibilities. I have a responsibility as superintendent to guide you as well, you know, on what you ought to be paying attention to. You know, for example, the signing off today or yesterday, whenever y'all signed off on that requirement of the audit, that's been done the last couple of years, but I don't think it's always been done. You know, I don't know that we have always followed the correct procedures. We kept an auditor for 10 years, internal auditor, and we discovered a lot of the problems once we decided to get rid of that auditor and come up with a new one. See, it's those type of things where a board ought to be asking, hey, you know, should we change external auditor, you know?
Well, see, my understanding would be we shouldn't ask that. That's your department.
Well, but that's just the point. Some of it is, yeah, I mean, again,
See, if I tell you that I think you need to go change your auditor, then I'm micromanaging the superintendent.
No, but it's, you know, it's a good,
So it needs to be brought up as a board decision,
yeah.
but it's a recommendation.
For example,
It's just oversight.
so for example, that policy could be in place. A local policy probably should be in place that the external auditor should be replaced every 4 to 5 years, or whatever limit you want to say. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But just the fact that we kept someone for 10 years was really a bad practice. Those are the type of things that the agency was trying to point out.
I agree. No, so I totally agree with that. I'm just saying it's kind of gets convoluted on where you draw those lines. Those lines of,
I think the best way to look at it is whatever the issue is, your mind should go into what should the policy be, not what the administration should do, but what should the policy be.
Are we following policy?
Yeah.
Or should there be a policy?
Should there be a policy? Now, and I'm going to use the example of transportation, for example. I'm not trying to be critical of the board vote, but I mean, it's a good example. No, it's a good example to use. No, seriously. You know, okay, the board voted a month ago, whatever it was, to implement last year's routes, okay? All right. In my opinion, the right vote for a board was to say, Mr. Superintendent, you know, we're not meeting the needs of the community if we're only transporting kids outside of 2 miles. So let's change the policy, transportation policy, to outside of 1.5 miles or outside of 1 mile. See, that's a policy.
And how he abides by that policy is his discretion.
See, that's a policy as opposed to saying we want the exact routes from last year. Then you cross the line into basically managing administering the district. That's an administration issue. I'm just using it as an example as to what's policy and what's administration. So that's what I'm saying. When you see a challenge, your mind as a board member should go directly to what is the policy that I need to recommend to put in place to correct this, as opposed to telling the administration this is what we want you to do and board wants it. That's
what the board decided on, that they failed to have a policy or institute a policy or ask for a policy. That's how they got cited at the top level.
Well, and I think, although now that you were in administration back then, now you're seeing opposite side of it. The
Yeah.
court, in administration back then, what was happening, there were no policies or anything. I mean, we ended up a book of policies that were not ever brought to the board. But TEA was saying the board failed to implement or to oversee the policies. And we said, well, we never even got them, and nothing was ever done. So we got, actually, we were thrown under the bus. That's how we all felt when we stopped that investigation. And it wasn't by Dr. Saavedra, we ended up, it was Dr. Juarez, because he's the one who responded to the investigation, and those were his words. So, yeah, it's a bad situation. We've come a long way.
Oh, yeah, we have come a long way.
And thank you for the clarification on policy.
Right.
You know, that's our role. I mean, really,
Right.
that is our role.
Right.
Let's look at
And-
policy.
And I know it's difficult sometimes to see it,
Mhm.
but that was an easy example to give you because we just lived through it, you know? And
Right.
so that's what I'm saying. Always look at what should the policy be so that I can get the end result that I'm seeking for my community. That's what the way a court ought to operate.
And the board has the authority to change policy.
Board has authority to change any policy, you know, or any local policy. You
No
can't
local,
change
no
any
legal.
legal
Can't
policy.
change the state.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So 2.11?
Yeah, we have to discuss, where do we put in the board's discussion of any agenda item? Shall not exceed 14 minutes with each trustee, allow 2 minutes to comment. Is that the language we put in there? And that's the language in the constraint.
And then do you want to put something in there that will, as to the discretion of the presiding officer, depending on the, I don't know how to say it.
To allow, what was your recommendation?
Oh,
And see, okay, so if we want to change that, we would have to change the constraint.
right. Okay.
So we can't change this procedure unless we change the policy.
So I think you would have to reflect the constraint from here first, then we'd have to go change the constraint and then change the policy again.
Well, I guess the first question inside of the board is, do you want to have that leeway? Do you want to give her the discretion?
Yeah.
If the
I think
answer
we
is,
should have it.
if the answer is yes, then I think what we do is, at the next board meeting, bring you the policy so that you can amend that policy to meet the new language. And at the same time,
You mean the constraint?
the constraint, well, yeah, but it's part of the policy, yes.
Because this constraint is policy, it's AE local.
Yeah.
All the constraints are now policies.
So at the next meeting, we go over the
The constraint to
AE
amend
local
it.
policy and then we,
Yeah, but we can do it both because we're discussing this, but we're not voting on it until December 20th.
okay.
So they
Yeah.
both come back.
So I could bring you the language for the local policy, and I can read the language for 2.11,
Yes.
so you can, it coincides, you know,
Sounds good.
okay? For December 20th,
So,
got it.
all right, amend, right?
And then with AE local. 2.12, questions to staff. All questions addressed to the administration or staff must be directed to the superintendent of schools. The superintendent, at his or her discretion, may ask administrators or staff present at the board meeting to address the board member who asked the question to the board as a whole or directly to the superintendent.
It should stay.
Okay. 215, use of electronic devices prohibited. So at no time during the board meeting, no cell phone, no texting. The use of phones or texting demonstrates a lack of respect. Under certain circumstances, even be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Board members will refrain from private discussions during any board meeting, whether in open or closed session. In the event of an emergency, board members will excuse themselves from the meeting to address the emergency. Okay. 2.14, member called to order. When a trustee shall be called to order by the president or by the presiding officer, the trustee shall not be allowed to speak except the point of order until the question of order is decided. If the decision be in the member's favor, the member shall be at liberty to proceed. If otherwise, the member shall not proceed without leave of the board, or as the case may be, the internal committee. Do you have any clarification on that? Dr. Souther, do you know the clarification to that?
It's a little convoluted.
Do we need a clarification, say?
Yes, if you can explain that. And you can explain it to me too.
When a member is called to order, that means that they're.
They're speaking on the term.
And I don't think out of term, out of discussion,
Or.
off topic.
Well, that's what the attorney is supposed to say. If you're not discussing the item and you find out the topic, he should correct us and say, excuse me, you
You're off
can't do
topic.
that. Right, exactly.
But if it's, what's the word? Germane,
Right.
then I think here it's stating that it needs to be voted on first. Or, to the question of orders decided, if the decision be in the member's favor, isn't that the decision by the board? Shall be at liberty to proceed. If otherwise, the member shall not proceed without leave of the board, or as the case may be, the internal committee. I don't know.
Yeah, that one, what kind of, I don't understand that.
I don't understand, yeah, calling the.
The member should not proceed without leave of the board.
I think it's germane, and I still think that's why we have this kind of committee. And he decides whether what's being discussed is in fact germane to the item or not, and that he's the one that says we can't, it has nothing to do with what you're discussing. I mean, that's what we have it here for.
So should this be in here, or should we?
It's confusing to me.
I don't think
We don't understand it, it shouldn't be in here. Do we want to enforce it?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah.
It's not
It really
clear.
isn't clear, and that's why, I mean, and I'm trying to look it up, and I don't even think it's in Robert's Rules of Order. So,
So delete?
I mean, yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that's why council did direct us that.
I think Kevin got a little creative.
2.15, refusal of member called to order to cease speaking. See, that's why I said what I said,
We
because,
tied together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever a trustee is called to order by the president or the presiding officer, then in the chair, and such member fails to cease speaking and be in order must continue, but continues disorderly, it shall be the duty of the sergeant at arms and/or sergeant's duties upon the direction of the president to require such recalcitrant trustee to be in order. Any trustee who persists in disorderly conduct after being warned by the presiding or president by motion duly made and carried by a majority of the members present, be removed from the meeting room by the sergeant at arms.
I don't think we need
Yeah.
this. I mean, I don't
We
know,
don't
that's
have
why I
sergeant at arms, so
think.
we'll remove anything that says sergeant
Sergeant
at
at
arms.
Okay. Yeah, it got that bad. I'm just saying, it got that bad.
And he was threatened, and then other members, you can't get rid of, take one of the board members out, and then a whole different argument started on that, so.
We've had major drama.
Oh, yeah, it was a circus. Okay, 2.16. Punishment for misconduct. The Board of Trustees may punish any member for disorderly conduct and with consent of the majority of the elected members, may expel a member for a period of time not to exceed 48 hours.
Well, what does that
What's the
mean?
purpose? 2
That
days?
2 days after the meeting, they can't come to the meeting? I mean, there's no more meeting.
We were calling meetings
Left and right.
left and
Are
right.
you serious right now? This is crazy.
Oh, yeah, it was there.
It was bad.
I would remove it.
Did we-
For one thing, it reflects badly on the district on the
Yeah,
board,
right,
that we would need these kind
We
of.
would need-
I agree with you.
Yes.
That's crazy.
We did.
Yeah, I don't think we need that.
Okay, let's remove that.
I'll remove myself if we ever get to that. I'm not supposed to be here right now.
Do I have a recording of that?
It's on tape right there.
I will pull off somewhere else.
Yeah.
What we'll do, Louis, is we'll have the DJ hold a red card, so when you start, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, you can take over number 3.
Communication between board members. Board members will observe the provision of the Texas Open Meetings Act at all times to avoid being circumvention of the act. I mean, it's just.
Should stay
It's just a.
for the benefit of the new board.
Right,
Right.
right.
Okay.
Board members may not conduct a poll by any means or method to determine how each board member will vote on any public issue or to discuss a public business in circumvention of an open discussion of an issue by all board members at a meeting we call. Y'all know, I think y'all understand that pretty well. 3.3, board members may contact one another for the sole purpose of determining a date, time, or place to hold a special call board meeting or to place an item on the agenda of a special call meeting.
Stay.
Good, okay.
Well, so what you're trying to set there is a standard for why we can contact each other?
Yeah, you can contact each other for the sole purpose to determine a date and time or a place to hold a special call board meeting or to place an item on the agenda of a special call meeting. But you really can't discuss school district business with each other at any time, quite frankly. Except you're at a posted board meeting. You know, you're not supposed to, with each, even if it's not a quorum, you know what I mean? Board members should not be deliberating issues of board business with each other. All of that should be at a posted meeting. The only thing you can do is find out, hey,
What time is it?
we need a board meeting, can you be here at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock on this date and so forth? You can do that. Yeah, you can do that, but you can't really be discussing anything else, you know?
Okay, you good?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, if you want to keep it, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So 3.4.
3.4, board members shall not communicate with one another via email if the communication involves the public business of the school district. See, if you can't do it by email, you can't do it verbally. You know, as far as conduct board business or discuss board business or district business. Responding to blast emails from board members may be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Consequently, board members will not respond to blast emails to other board members. In communicating with board members on any email, the superintendent shall include a disclaimer at the end of the email admonishing board members to refrain from responding to the email. It is not a violation of law for board members to respond to the superintendent only. You know, I send y'all emails quite frequently, all of you at the same time. What you can't do is you know,
Reply all.
reply all, or you can reply to Lewis, or reply to Andrew, or reply to somebody over here and say, what do you think? You know,
Right.
that's deliberation,
Okay.
Only to you.
only to me. Now, you can send it to me, you know.
And he's not supposed to send it.
Right, I cannot, right? For example, I used to get from different board members in the past.
And then he can send it.
Yeah, you know, they tell me something, please share that with the rest of the board. You know, Kevin kind of corrected us on that. Actually, for a while, we did that, you know, for a while. But Kevin corrected us on that, you know. Because basically, the superintendent just becomes a middle person to transmit in
It
information.
becomes a discussion then.
Yeah, right.
Through you,
Yeah.
because of
You're the
discussion.
messenger.
Now, I can't send anything to all of you at any time, you know, because I'm not a board member, all right? And you can respond to me individually only. You can't respond to me and
Not
copy
reply all.
everybody else, Because at that point, the discussion goes to everybody else. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, y'all do a good job. I don't think we've been in violation of this in a long time, you know? And back then, it was made only because we didn't necessarily understand the rules so well.
Okay, before we go on,
Yes.
I wanted to introduce something, and it kind of left me.
Okay?
Under the section, conducting board meetings,
Which number?
2, so I guess it would be an addition, 2.17.
Okay.
So,
2.which one?
there isn't one, I'm adding, I want to add.
Oh,
Would it be 2.14 now?
Yes, I'm saying, once we
Well,
delete all
once
the
we
other
delete it,
stuff,
it'll be
we'll adjust the
the
numbers.
addition. So, I had clarity today, in speaking with AJ, which is the deputy commissioner. I had asked him if I'm following the Lone Star governance framework, and I specifically, and I'm not sure if y'all are aware, probably not, but Lewis posed the question that he wanted a report on the transportation and the motion that the board made. And so in following the Lone Star governance, I didn't know where to put that because it didn't follow in the student outcome goals, constraints to the superintendent, or the constraint to the board. So it was going to go into consent, but I don't believe any action was going to be taken because he's just wanting a report. So I asked AJ, hey, what do I do in this situation? He goes, well, if it's not a goal, it's not a constraint, then it shouldn't be on the board agenda. He should be given a report outside of a meeting. So however you do that, and Dr. Smith said, I update the board every single week. He was okay with it, and that update should be his report. The board you can ask for any report, and if you ask for a report, it's not going to be in a board meeting. If it's not alignment with the goals, it's constraints.
So it would come in your weekly report on Fridays,
Right.
or the last day of the week.
Yeah, it's either that or sometimes, I sometimes send them during the week also individually, but ordinarily it's at the end of the week, right?
So I need to put that in here, stating that if you are submitting agenda items that are not relevant to those, it's not going to make the meeting. Unless it's a state requirement or board action on those items.
We need to be.
So you're asking for report, right?
Yeah.
Or an update. Is
Yeah.
that maybe, Dr. Sveta, like that, because it impacts the student bodies and the parents, should we not put a report, maybe like on the website? I mean, the report's only going to go to Lewis, I guess, or will.
It all goes
all
off.
members.
Okay. So, but I think the community needs an update to see what's the busing status, maybe, because they don't get your update.
Right.
So, and there is a link right now, I think, for transportation when it first comes up. So maybe an update, you know, if anything has changed.
Well, nothing's changed, actually. What I understood was an updated report, where are we with the vote of the board, right? Like, where are we in implementing those?
Yeah, and I guess my concern with that in specific, I mean, I'm not necessarily concerned moving forward, I guess, if we know the rules, but this was a vote taken here that,
So, okay.
so a
let me-
motion was brought, it was voted on, we made a decision, and now I'm asking for an update.
So I was kind of a little reprimanded that I wasn't firm enough. It should have never made the agenda.
What?
The chance for you to make a motion.
On transportation?
Mm-hmm.
In other words,
That's what
that agenda item should not have been on the agenda, so we would have not
Made action.
acted.
So we would not have voted and nothing
Yeah.
would change.
No. You have to bring it in as a constraint. If your issue is with transportation, then you would need to make it as a constraint. And then, but the constraints that we put into place have guidelines as to what is a constraint, how is it measured, what, the SMART has to be timeline, who does it apply to, stuff like that. So we have to follow
And it has
those
to be
rules.
measurable, you gotta be able to measure and give.
Because remember, we're in following the Lone Star governance, we're trying to give the superintendent autonomy. And so we want to regulate or have oversight in specific operational areas. Well, through the Lone Star governance, we're given three. We can have three constraints. So basically, only three areas that we can. He's responsible. He has to keep he has to follow the laws and do as right by running the whole school district. But as oversight, we can only be monitoring three.
And the 3
3 to 5.
is, that's the governance gives you only 3, you can't have more constraints?
I
You
think
can have
it's
up
three
to 5.
Up to 5, but the recommended,
That it
It's
was better
three.
to have 3 because this is
because we want to go into mastery focus.
So what's the line of the 2 points?
Well, that was it,
Oh.
is how, that's my thought, so what is?
So your thought is, you wanna put something in a board operating procedure about what makes the agenda?
Yes, because that's the subject, conducting board meetings.
And we need to make it specific then, because remember, this is going to be viewed by the new board members,
Yes.
and they have no clue what a constraint is, or what
They
what
have
it
been
is
trained
for governance.
They don't start
or-
So in speaking with AJ, depending where the vote went today, however, we went through a special election or we went through an appointee, he was gonna make himself available to do a Lone Star governance for our district again.
When
And
you
so
come down here.
he would come to us, we would pay him whatever the fee is, and then we, at our discretion, we can open it up to other districts to come and share the cost.
Charge them? Oh, that'd be cool.
I'd like to see it go out to the community,
See what?
the Lone Star governance.
They could come, they could be in the audience.
Yeah, but nobody comes to our meetings. If we want to show the community what we're really doing and how we're improving it, we need to start taking it out to the people and say, look, this is why we do the things we do. We're going by the Lone Star governance. These are the constraints that we have. These are the goals that we have. Because that's one of the things we're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Our goals to the public, we're not doing it.
Yeah, that is another step that we need to start having our own town hall meetings.
We need to have it within our district.
Have our own town hall meetings or have a elective town hall meeting for the district where we conduct those meetings. The board conducts the meetings as to where we're going and what we're
I
doing.
think that's the next step. I think we need to.
That is in there.
Yeah.
I just haven't talked about that yet.
And we're,
And like, I'm sorry,
it's okay. I was just saying, we're at the point where we're all starting to grasp the concept and the understanding of what all the Lone Star governance means. It's this process that we're going through. Now we're going to have 2 new people coming in, 2 new representatives coming in. So we're going to have to bring them along also to get, and then I think once all of that is in place, then we need to go out to the community. That is a must.
And I think
to
this
show them what
AJ
we're
coming
doing.
back, I think we should wait till the board members are in place.
Yes, that's what he suggested.
Yes. Exactly.
And then he also said he would even help us have a meeting with those who are interested in running, being appointed. Correct, Dr. Silva?
Yeah.
Where he can kind of give them a short run or a short segment of what Lone Star governance is and how board members should conduct themselves in a meeting. And then, of course, once whoever we appoint, then you'll have the full one.
Should it be open to anyone who's going to apply?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, that would be good.
Definitely.
So they can
but
say,
They can see what they're getting.
This girl,
No, I think it's valuable. That's what we're gonna do.
So what do you want your,
Um,
read here, ma'am?
Well, I kind of said it, but I don't know how to write it.
So that the,
The board agenda should only be, the items on discussion, possible actions should be in relationship to the student outcome goals, the superintendent constraints, or the board constraints for the board.
That's all.
You did it? You got it.
You got it.
You got it.
All right.
We'll draw something.
Michelle.
You know,
and that'll be 2 point whatever, because we deleted a bunch.
14.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Can I ask a question about communication before we move on?
yes.
Is using the term email too limiting for what the intent is, given that there's multiple ways of communicating with people besides email,
Texting.
Yeah,
texting,
text.
FaceTime, all of those electronic communication? Seems like it ought to be an umbrella term instead of just,
Any
Via
kind of
technology.
electronic communication?
well,
Via technology, because you can't even use a phone.
What do you mean?
You're not supposed to call each other,
Oh, well, it does say texting here. Maybe the phones are texting in the case of like, oh, no, I think, I'm just talking about emails.
You're talking about the one about.
Okay, responding to blast emails.
3.4.
Okay, so, yeah, it doesn't have.
So what we can say is board members shall not communicate with one another via email or any other form of communication. If the communication involves the public, something like that. You need a catch-all clause or whatever it may be.
And in one word, if you put should not communicate,
Any form of communication,
Yeah, any form of communication.
instead of having the name on
because
it.
any form of communication could mean written, could mean electronic, could mean,
And that'll encompass everything,
so any form of communication. So shall not communicate with one another.
And then I think that next question the next statement should be in, that's supposed to be in there, no blast emails, no responding to blast emails or text. Remember, we did have that problem with texting,
Where
where one
Board
responded and then everybody started responding on that thread.
yes.
So that one, this one
I
would
think we
read,
got a text about a bus accident one time, and then everybody started responding to that, or that's what you mean?
Yes,
That
you
we
can.
shouldn't be doing
You
that.
can't respond.
so this one's about board members shall not communicate with one another via any form of communication if the communication involves public or school.
Yes. But then we also have to have that second statement where we can't respond in a blast. We can respond, but only to you,
Right, but that's what this says, right?
But it says emails,
but only
also
email,
need
or
text.
you texting,
You say and text.
or group chat, or all kinds of things.
And your notes
You can just say responding to any form of communication. Responding to any communication pertaining to school district business may be a violation of the open meeting law. Something like that.
Mhm. The conservator had a remark on the communication aspect. That email was just too constrictive, because there's all kinds of modes of communication now, texting, email, and so she said that maybe we need to visit that and not just limit it to email.
So the second sentence would read, responding to any communication that pertains to district business. May be a violation of open meetings act. Or, responding to board members. Or responding to any communication pertaining to district business to board members may be a violation. Okay, got it?
Got it?
Yeah, I think so.
Number 4. Dr.
Okay, board members visiting campuses, administration buildings, and other district facilities. Board members must obey and follow all state laws, district policies, and campus rules and regulations regarding visiting campuses, administration buildings, and other district facilities. They were just standard, they were good there. 4.2, in order to become competent fiduciaries, board members must have access to information. However, all board members agree that the acquisition of information should be orderly and with the least possible disruption to the administration of the school district. Therefore, board members must coordinate with the student schools at least within 24 hours in advance of visiting a school campus, administration building, and other district facilities. Board members must also advise the superintendent when they would like to discuss school-related issues with any individual member of the district staff and of the matter to be discussed. The superintendent may, at his or her discretion, decide how to best accommodate the board members' request for information. Board members, after advising the superintendent of their intent to visit the facility on arrival of the facility, must report to the appropriate administrator for checking procedures. All board members are subject to the same checking procedures in all district facilities, especially school campuses, as are any visitors, parents, or district patrons. The only suggestion I have for y'all on this one, when it talks about the 24-hour requirement, therefore board members must coordinate with the superintendent of schools at least within 24 hours. You know, many times it's the same day, and so my suggestion is just remove the 24 hours. And leave in place, we'll coordinate with the superintendent these visits. And all of you, I think, are pretty good at letting me know, call me, I'm going to visit a campus and that kind of stuff.
I have a question on that where it says report, must report to the appropriate administrator for checking procedures. I think sometimes the administrator is not available.
Yeah,
So we just go and check in,
it's
in
what,
and out.
that's perfectly okay. That's perfectly okay. when you go to school, they have to check in.
Right.
That's all that is.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't see the
Visitor
administrator.
center.
Yeah, we're visitor signing, that's all it is, yeah. Yeah, that meets that requirement. Okay. Any other suggestions on this one? Relations with district staff. Board members must not direct, order, or suggest to any district staff how to best accomplish their assigned tasks. Any questions, complaints, comments, or suggestions about district operations should be directed to the superintendent. The superintendent may, at his or her discretion, decide how to best address the board members' questions, complaints, comments, or suggestions. Pretty routine. Okay. 5.2, board members must at all times maintain the dignity and respectability consistent with their position as leaders and fiduciaries of the school district. Board members must at all times maintain a professional and respectful relationship with administrators, employees, teachers, and students. However, this procedure shall not violate board policy or DGBA local, which allows employees to have direct communication with board members relative to district operations. Board members shall not be prohibited from socializing with employees outside of work hours on a personal and non-school-related basis.
I'm okay with it, but why the caps? Our relationship with,
Oh, I don't know.
it's just implying something.
Yeah.
Can we remove the gap?
Why is it capitalized?
Yeah, I don't know. So that's
Just
Kevin.
change it
I would
to
say
lowercase.
it credit doesn't need to be.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. No caps.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of.
Implies.
Screams it out.
Yeah. is there something
Relationship
going on?
with.
Is there something we don't know?
I guess in light of what's going on right now, you've got to be very careful about relationships with students.
Honestly, I don't know whether,
I don't know.
I don't know whether this was part of the amendment of Kevin or whether it was the original one drafted by Pablo. I really don't know. Probably just someone hit the cap, it got lost for a couple of words and then
Okay.
caught it incorrectly. All right, 5.3, board members may not at any time assume a participatory role with staff or students unless specifically requested by campus staff.
What does that mean?
Explain that.
For example,
You can't participate.
I'll
on
give you
your
an
own.
example with JoJo. We go to the high school, and it really kind of boss people around, from what I understand. You know, I mean, right as I was coming in, he resigned a few months after I was in. But they basically would get that little, what do you call that little, with the couch get on?
The Segway?
The Segway. He would ride the Segway all over the school, correcting people and so forth. There's a board member. And it's that, basically. Unless you're, as a board member, the teacher says, hey, can you help me sponsor whatever we're doing, you know? You can't just go in there and take over what the business of the district.
And then he was also calling soccer games or
Oh, yeah.
baseball, football games or
Oh,
something.
Yeah, he would go to the
And they let him, just, and football player number such and such, and that's
Oh,
my
like
son's
the
from
announce-
Midway, and look
the
up, and it's
announcer?
Joe.
yeah, he would go to the press box and take over the mic, you know?
Wow.
How strange.
So,
I don't think any of us.
That sounds
Can we take it
Now
out?
you know why we had these. But that's one reason.
But is that something that we need?
I don't think so,
I
but.
mean, I don't know,
I don't necessarily think so.
I think,
Yeah.
I don't either, but I keep thinking about new board members. They need to know everything, and then if we need to take it off, we'll take it off.
No, we gotta tell them.
Well, but
I
they
know.
have to read this.
I would say
Well, they
that.
gotta read it.
New orientation,
Mhm.
you kind of go through some of this and you say,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
but
then if it's
that's
not a
fine.
problem anymore,
We
you
can
can
always
always
take
leave
it
it.
off.
You can't ride the Segway.
Oh.
We put a sign on the Segway, no board members.
You gonna see me at Southside tomorrow?
Okay, request information from staff. Board members may request information from the superintendent only. The superintendent must address the board members' request without disruption to the school district. Okay? We leave it in there, yeah. Board members may not request information directly from any member of the administration other than the superintendent. To me, that says.
That's the same thing.
It says the same thing. How
Take one of them out.
about if we take the first one out, and the second one's more clear, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
6.2 becomes 6.1. Okay, the next one. Board members must be cognizant of the fact that an overly voluminous request for information or request for a quick response may be unduly burdensome to the student or staff. Consequently, board members must balance the reasonableness of the request with the potential for disrupting district operations.
I mean,
That needs to stay.
I see, you know, that's valid.
Yeah, there's also a legal policy that requires the administration to keep up with these major requests, not the little stuff, a few pages at a time, but if someone was to ask something that's going to take 50, 100 pages, 200, and
They have to log in the time.
yeah, we're supposed to log it, and if it becomes, and report it out to the state, I think in August. You know, honestly, we've not had anything like that. We keep up with it for the most part, but we don't pay that much attention to it because it hasn't been too bad. But we do keep up with it. Okay. Board members, number
6.4.
6.4, thank you. Agree that a response by the superintendent to a request for information by a board member will be shared with all board members. We all understand that. Closed session. Board members agree that matters discussed in closed session must remain confidential until or unless a vote is taken on a matter that thereafter becomes public. Board members further agree that disclosing closed session matters to the public may result in liability to the district. Consequently, board members shall not disclose closed session discussions and deliberations to any member of the public. I think this has happened in recent months and so forth. You know, I think we discussed it once already, and I don't think we need to discuss it again. But this becomes real important because it is a violation of law, you know, when anything leaks out.
Yeah.
Okay. Board governance, 8.1. The qualified members of the Board of Trustees after each regular trustee election shall elect officers pursuant to board policy BDAA legal and local. The board may elect officers at no other time except at the anniversary of the regular trustee elections.
I mean, we probably need some board operating procedure on that, right? Just to kind of have, like, that's the
What
rule,
happened?
that's our rule, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, stay.
I think it would need to stay.
Yeah, it needs to stay. Yeah, we've been following it. You know.
Well, okay, so here's my thing. Linda was board secretary.
Oh, I know, so
So
that
how
one
does that
goes on
apply
the next
here?
one,
8.2.
8.2.
Okay.
Yeah, 8.2, take care of it.
Oh, yeah.
The exception to this procedure would include the resignation of a board member, the resignation of a board member who is also a board officer, and any reason for removal as outlined in board policy BBC legal that involves the board officer. So, yeah, we have.
So now we could, I mean, because she resigned, you could technically reassign that secretary position.
Yeah, the
Officer
board,
position.
the board could do that, yeah, at any time, when y'all are ready to assign a new secretary, you would do that.
Does it need to be in the agenda?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, 8.3, continuity in board leadership is vital to the stability of the Board of Trustees and the school district. Notwithstanding the provisions found in 8.1, 8.2, the board may have to exercise provisions of board policy BDAA legal under various situations emanating from provisions of 8.1, 8.2.
Okay, explain that one to me.
Well,
I
that's
think
legal.
that's what we did.
That's legal. I can tell us legal language, that Laura wrote this.
Yes.
So I think there's gonna be certain situations where we don't follow 8.1 and 8.2, and it's okay to do that with 8.3, is what he's saying.
I think you're right.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right. Keep it right.
Consequences and sanctions. 9.1, the board president, after corroborating any violations of the operating procedures may issue a warning in writing to the offending board members. The President will advise the Board of Trustees of this action.
The president after corroborating.
So the violations are any of these items.
Any of these items, you can issue a
Then I'm
warning
gonna
in
issue-
writing. The president will advise.
Was it ever done?
Yes,
Back when?
not too long ago.
Rosemary.
Rosemary
I
Martinez,
remember this one, Rosemary.
they did a written one.
What did she do?
I don't know.
It wasn't good.
Well, then I guess it ought to be there for the sake of the
New
new
board
board
members.
members. But they know that they could be written.
Okay, 9.2, the board president will determine if the board member has repeatedly violated provisions of the operating procedures. The board president will appoint a board committee to review the violations or bring the matter to the full board of trustees.
He didn't go any further than that, but.
Yeah.
But it's another
It was
step.
needed.
Yeah.
It had one.
The board,
So what you're saying is that you would
I would issue a
form a
warning,
committee of, okay, so,
but of
let's
repeated
say-
violations.
right, so let's say I'm the board member causing trouble. So you would appoint a committee of the remaining 6 board members to evaluate my actions. Is that what that's saying?
Mhm.
7.
To review?
Or 7? Wait, yeah, 7. So the remaining, well, no, there's 7 total, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I'm the bad guy,
Six.
so the remaining 6, you pick a committee out of there to review my actions? Is that what you're saying? Is that what that's saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out.
Keys and dot your I's.
Or I bring the matter to the full board.
Right,
Okay,
yeah,
I think it should say.
yeah.
9.3, the board of trustees may consider an official public reprimand at a board meeting. A violation will be read into the record of the board proceedings in the open session. The board of trustees will vote on this matter as appropriate. Okay.
Severe.
harsh.
9.4, the superintendent will be responsible for establishing a reporting system for his or her principals, department directors, or executive team. The reporting system will be designed to address any violation of the aforementioned operating procedures as related to the superintendent and staff. The superintendent will advise the board president and/or the board of trustees if any reported violations.
Okay.
But are you talking about a reporting system for the,
For if board members continually seek staff to do stuff without,
Right.
without going through the
oh,
superintendent.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
There's certain items there that are like.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, everything should be coming to the superintendent, and one of you goes to the principal and said, hey, will you do this for me, or look into this for me? And it never came to me. And honestly, the principals have directives from us to let us know when a board member goes directly to you.
Right.
And, but that's what this is.
Yeah, it stays.
The final one, enforcement procedures pertain to any member of the board, including the board officers. The trustees must request a specific agenda item that addresses repeated violations of the board operating procedures by any board officer.
3 trustees?
I mean, these are just basically sanctions and consequences, enforcement in other words. Is there any
Addition.
additions, new language or a new area that should be addressed, that we haven't addressed?
I did have one.
Go ahead, sorry.
I have one, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have not spoken to any of the media in my tenure as president. And so, what do y'all think about putting something like that in here to where, we have a hired person, which is the PIO,
I think that's
Jocelyn?
what she's been doing, right?
Yeah, but to put it in our operating procedures,
I like
that,
I think that when we got on at orientation, I want to say, we were
it was
told,
suggested,
right?
but there's
Yeah, because
no
we didn't
language.
have any rules to enforce it.
I think we should put it in.
Definitely.
We do have a person that is assigned to do that for the district. And the public information officer should be the person that the media will be interviewing.
I don't know if we make another heading, Dr. Saavedra, or?
Under communications, yeah.
Communications.
Communication between board members, that one?
No. Just general.
about the communication between board members and just put communication, and then communication between the board members.
Maybe a 3.0.
Well, you have relations with district staff, you could probably have relations with media.
Okay, where's that at?
Relations is 5.0, relations with in capital. I'm just kidding.
It is capitalized.
Yeah, you just slash media and tack it on as a 5.4.
So,
What do you want, as a 5.4?
yeah. So 5-point relations with district staff / media. And then it'll be a 5.4.
And what we want is that, I guess, something like meeting, all meeting inquiries should be coordinated through the public information officer. Right, okay, something like that. Right.
All right, anything else?
I move for adjournment.
Okay, so
Motion to adjourn.
Well, before we do,
Okay.
because I'm the one, I got to certify y'all, y'all met all the requirements. So I got to give you homework, and so you need about 40 minutes of homework to meet the time requirement.
Oh, I see, that's right.
So, you know, my suggestion is
Go get the coffee
that
and
y'all
salt and
carefully read this, absorb it, and read it at home. on your
Oh,
own.
no, but we're having coffee and dancing.
Yeah, yeah, you can do it. And, you know, I trust that y'all will do 40 minutes of review
Go back
and so
and,
forth, so that I can honestly say we did 3 hours total.
especially the ones that say the board policy, legal. you know,
Yeah.
Any
sure
reference to board policy, we should look up.
we should look up.
Okay,
Right.
so a motion has been made for adjournment by Mrs. Prado, seconded by
I'll second.
Mr. Ibarra, and the time is 8:19. Yay!